Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Shiva. Good evening. So today I'm going to be speaking about a topic that's going to come from a scientific molecular system standpoint. It turned out that a lot of people, when they heard about what CytoSolve really does, people said, hey, Dr. Shiva, can you speak about adrenochrome? I knew adrenochrome was a byproduct of an oxidative process that occurs naturally in the body. But then behind adrenochrome was all of this entire history of it being used by people to advance, quote unquote, advance health for other purposes. So I didn't know a lot about that, but I thought I'd put my best foot forward to really understand it from a science standpoint. And what I uncovered was something very fascinating. And I want to propose a theory here because the news out there in the broad ether is that there are certain groups of elites, and this is something I'm just starting to learn about, that basically are taking advantage of children. And by putting those children into a state of a flight or fight response and torturing them, the children start producing adrenochrome. And in that state, a process which I don't fully understand enough, that the adrenochrome is extracted and people consume it for their own health and well-being, almost a type of quote unquote vampirism. So anyway, that's sort of in the ether, but I wanted to sort of peel back and come at it from a science standpoint. And that's what I'm going to share here. What I'm going to share with you tonight actually in a very, very interesting way matches with the molecular science, but it also, interestingly enough, with my own studies of Eastern and Western medicine, it starts matching from what's called the Indian chakra system. So what I'm going to share with you today is a architecture for looking at adrenochrome. And I believe what I've discovered here is a way to explain from a molecular system standpoint what people have been in the ether, what I'm saying in the ether of the internet and the ether of social media talking about, meaning that the general thesis here is that what I've heard, and again, I haven't had a chance to validate this. That's why I got so many emails, people saying, Dr. Shiva, can you talk about this from a science standpoint? But if you think about it, is that when a animal is in its what is called flight or fight response, which means, let's say, for example, a lion is chasing a zebra, it's flight or flight. It's under massive amounts of adrenaline flow, right? Because that's what adrenaline is, and we'll talk about that. Now, in order for adrenochrome to be created, we'll talk about it, you need not just adrenaline, but you need an oxidative species, okay? And this is what I think I've made an interesting discovery here. That oxidative reduction process cannot occur if there's also not anxiety. So what I've heard in the ether, again, I haven't verified it, is that these elites, some very nasty people, are doing child trafficking of children. They first of all basically they frighten them, which is get them into the flight or flight response, which creates adrenaline. And then somehow the adrenochrome is being created. And I'm going to talk to you about my thesis that I think of how this is happening and being able to explain that. But fundamentally, this is the approach that I do with CytoSolve, that we're able to mine these papers, build theoretical architectures, let me go back here, to explain some very complex stuff. I wanted to let you know that we use the technology here. We've helped many, many companies over the last 16 years, a lot of smart, innovative companies, but we decided with all the mathematical models we've created, why don't we try to use this to compute the best product we could think of from the science out there for reducing pain and inflammation, pain and discomfort. And that resulted in us creating MV25 using CytoSolve. We're going to have more products that are going to be coming, but let me just show you what MV25 is about for those of you who haven't heard about it. But this is using CytoSolve in a beneficial way, not to just do research, but find combination therapies.
Hi, I'm Barbara Ann. My hands would cramp up so that I couldn't hold cards or knit or crochet, and they would go like that. And I'd have to use this when I played cards with my grandkids. And I started taking that MV25. After a bit, I was able to hold cards in my hand, very, very little cramping, hardly at all anymore. MV25.
Hi, my name is Sandy. I'm a Taekwondo instructor. I tore my ACL during Taekwondo. I had a lot of pain and limited mobility. I've been taking the MV25 for about 6 months now. After the first week, I noticed a big difference. After the second week, almost literally no pain.
My name is Jeremy, and I suffer from a lower back problem. Hurt my back at work years ago, and I can go to the chiropractor, do all kinds of different things, and nothing seems to help. And I decided to try MV25. I didn't notice a difference immediately, but within a few days, the pain went away, and it stayed away. I've continued to take it, and even when I do things that I shouldn't do, it seems to go away a lot quicker than it ever did before.
It's clean food certified. It's made in the US. If you go to vashiva.com, right on the shop, you'll click there, or you can go right to mv25.life, either way. And then from there, you can click on the bottle and you can order. If you buy 6 bottles, you get 6 bottles for free. Please take advantage of it because first of all, it's going to help you. It's going to help our movement, and it really supports the fact that we want to take science-based approaches to natural products. Before I go there, I want to take a step back. As I mentioned to you, it's separate from the science stuff, separate from traditional Western medicine. I've been a big study of all types of Eastern methods. I've been meditating in all different forms since I was a 4 or 5-year-old kid. I've studied with all different teachers of the Eastern tradition. But in the Eastern systems of medicine, there are 2 very interesting glands. Your body in the Eastern system of medicine is composed of chakras, and each one of these chakras, there's a whole thesis on it. In the Western medical system, we don't even talk about it, but there is, I believe, a physical basis for this, which I've done some research on, which I'll do a whole nother session on. But these are these different chakras. Now, in traditional systems of medicine, in the original form, you were supposed to integrate all of these chakras. But over time, what ended up happening was different people created their own schools of yoga. Some people just focused on the heart chakra, right? Some people would focus on the throat chakra. Some people should focus on the crown chakra. Some people should focus on the root chakra, and so on. So even yoga and meditation itself has become sort of reduced into multiple forms. There is very little integrated yoga. Just like we have in medicine, everything's been shattered. Don't have your illusions that even the Eastern systems have been shattered into multiple forms. But what you notice here is that what I want to focus on is the root chakra and the crown chakra. What's interesting is in different traditions, they label the chakras differently, but this is a tradition that I'm used to where the base chakra is associated, as you notice, with the adrenal glands. Adrenals, you see that? It is known as the base chakra. Some people call it the primal chakra, down at the bottom of your base, of your essence of who you are. The crown chakra is associated with the pineal gland. You notice there are 2 glands here, the pituitary and the pineal. The pineal is associated with chakra 7, the pituitary with chakra 6. So just keep this in mind. In the meditative process, as I mentioned, there are various ways that you can pursue these different arts of yoga. One form of yoga is called Kundalini yoga. Kundalini. It says that there is an energy at your base of your spine, and the idea is to uncoil that. And through that uncoiling process, you turn on all the different chakras and you achieve enlightenment. Now, those people who start studying Kundalini, many years ago, I studied with one of the great Kundalini masters who passed on about 5 years ago. But he said you have to be very careful with the Kundalini energy. It is it could be a very destructive energy. It's very primal. In the traditional systems of Indian yoga, it's considered one of those things you don't fool around with. It could be dangerous. People can go crazy. People can go, listen to this very carefully, schizophrenic, and I'll come back to this. You can literally hurt yourself. Now, there are other chakras that you can focus on. For example, one type of yoga is called Bhakti yoga, Bhakthi, which is focused on the heart chakra. So the heart chakra idea is that's connected in between the other chakras. You focus on the heart, which is love, devotion to service. And that's one way to achieve enlightenment. The other way is you focus on the crown chakra using your pineal gland, and we'll talk about that. The reason I want to talk about this is I have a little bit of a different perspective. When I look at this, I see that there's a base chakra where the adrenal glands are involved, adrenochrome, we'll talk about this, and then the crown chakra, which is a pineal gland, and melatonin. And the reason I put in this tweet is these are 2 very different chemicals. Melatonin, as we'll hear about, really comes from meditation, from peace. It's something that comes out of calmness at night in darkness when melatonin is released. When you meditate, melatonin is released. It is a thing. If you meditate regularly, you will notice that, this is a real phenomenon. You will see a blue light as you close your eyes. And that blue light, some people say, is your portal to enlightenment. But it is the melatonin being released. It is a pathway in the Eastern traditions to enlightenment. Now, if you start at the base chakra, it's a very, very different approach. but it's much more primal as that could be very dangerous. So I wanted to give you that Eastern background because it'll give you some background to what I'm going to share from now the Western side. And I'm going to put my hat on as the MIT trained systems biologist, because most of the MIT guys, what I just said, they'd probably say, what the hell is this guy saying? We should never have given him his PhD out of MIT. Unfortunately for them, they gave me my PhD. So let me go back to this. I'm going to now take the Western approach. But you'll see the fact, one of the cool technologies is a very technology for doing mathematical modeling of all different kinds of biological functions, not only in the human body, but in plants. In fact, we used CytoSolve several years ago to show how when genetic engineering occurs, how it perturbs molecular pathways inside of plants to result in down-regulation of glutathione and antioxidant and upregulation of formaldehyde. It was over a series of 5 papers. It was a tremendous amount of work we did. But CytoSolve is really a way to model life. Today, I use it for a whole range of natural products development. We have really cool companies who come to us. We make really cool discoveries. And for me, it's getting back to what my grandmother inspired me to do. But that's what CytoSolve is. But I want to walk you through the fact that what we do is to recognize that your body is different, my body is different. So the goal is with CytoSolve, our goal is to discover the right medicine, starting with food, for the right person at the right time. And the technology is really, as you see, a technology for modeling biological functions, meaning we can mathematically model chemical reactions inside the body to discover medicines faster, cheaper, and safer, while eliminating the need for animal testing. We're able to take lots and lots of papers in a field, curate them, extract out the mechanisms, build overall architecture, and figure things out. Now I'm going to jump to sort of the Western approach to do this. So what you see here is that when you look at the pineal gland, where is it physically in the body? The pineal gland is a little pea-sized thing above your pituitary, and it's behind your hypothalamus. It's back here, and we'll get into it. And then you have your adrenal glands, which literally ride above your kidneys. This is what's called the endocrine system. You have various glands: hypothalamus, pituitary, thyroid, thymus, pancreas, adrenals. But the adrenal glands in the Indian system, as I mentioned, are denoted as the root chakra, chakra 1. Pineal gland is a crown chakra. Now, let's go into the pineal gland. Now, the pineal gland, this was once dubbed the third eye. Now, what's fascinating is when I took in my PhD program many years ago, I took the PhD neuroscience course, and I remember the professor, I believe her name was Susan Corcoran, and she said, oh, the pineal gland. Remember, we were studying the brain, and she said, oh, the pineal gland is a useless gland.
I know where you're going with this.
What? And
it's useless, right?
Yeah, she said it's a useless, and you know, people used to call it the seat of soul. I sort of was remarking at the arrogance of this person because as someone who meditated regularly, I knew the power of the pineal gland, the experience I had with it. But anyway, Western, and by the way, the pineal gland is the last gland in the endocrine system that's been discovered and really studied. So they don't even know enough about it. I'll share with you some stuff we do know that's just come out. Frankly, in the last 20 years, I got interested in the pineal gland about 1980, late 80s, when, you know, while I was a student at MIT, I used to do different research projects. One of the interesting things was people have asked about 5G, but I want to take to longer than that because I have some experience in this. Some of you may remember that people were putting down power lines, those big high tension wires. And a lot of people are concerned, do those high tension wires cause cancer? Do they affect the pineal gland? And again, very little was known, but I remember doing research at the time and there was so little research. That research was funded by the European Power and Research Company. Obviously, they probably wanted to show that there was nothing going on with the pineal gland. But what I did find at that time, a paper done in Israel, which I'll get to, showed that the pineal gland is actually piezoelectric. Piezoelectric, okay? And I'll explain what that means. Again, you can see it's present in the brain of most vertebrates. It's dubbed as a third eye. It's really the posterior aspect of the cranial fossa in the brain, which means it's way deep in there. And it's deep in the center of the brain. It's very small. It's 0.1 grams, 0.8 centimeters. So the pineal gland is about 1/3 of an inch. The other part of it is it produces a hormone melatonin as well as 5-methoxytryptophan. And it regulates what's called the circadian rhythm of sleep and the regulation of reproductive hormones. Some of you may know I've talked about this. One of my first projects when I was working at medical school as a 14-year-old kid was to look at the circadian sleep patterns of babies. And I was doing modeling. This was when I was 14 years old while I was building that email system. As a 14-year-old kid, I was looking at sleep patterns of babies and trying to predict the onset of an apnea where the baby would stop breathing. But the point is, the pineal gland, we now know, is involved in that entire sleep process. In fact, if you don't sleep well, meditation could be valuable for you. It's a way to reset your sleep patterns. We'll also see that people who don't sleep well, night shift workers, that their pineal gland can go off and it can cause different disturbances. So in my view, if you want to start looking at electromagnetic radiation, instead of talking about the conspiracy theories of it, which actually hurt the science, which is what a lot of the not so obvious establishment do. They bring up conspiracy theories, but the reality is that this electrical magnetic waves, in my view, affects the pineal gland because it actually can take electricity in, convert it to mechanical action to electricity. I'll talk about that. But it regulates the reproductive hormones. Now, this is the structure of melatonin. If you want to understand it, it's got a 6-ring structure here, and I don't want to get into all the biochemistry. It's got a 5-ring structure. It's got a nitrogen group here, but this is called N-acetyl-5-methoxytryptamine. That is the organic chemistry definition of melatonin. And melatonin is biogenic amine that is found in animals. It also occurs in plants and microbes. So it's quite interesting. It occurs in a lot of different places, and it synthesizes, I'll show you, from tryptophan and serotonin. And melatonin secretion is increased in darkness and decreased in light. You spend a lot of stuff around all these light things, you're going to have less melatonin. I'm not only talking about 5G or electric power, but just lights, all the blue light that we get. So it's increased in darkness. That's why yogis would go into caves. That's why the more we can get into darkness, pure darkness out in the country. I mean, when I used to go to my grandparents' village, it was the deepest sleep I would ever get. I mean, dead sleep. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, people should note this because if you sleep with lights on, even clocks or night lights or even outside lights that are on, it's going to affect your sleep.
Yeah. And remember, this melatonin controls all sorts of different biological processes in your body. And for those chemists there, so if you take tryptophan is this chemical. If you see the structure here, it's got an aldehyde group here. And tryptophan hydroxylase converts tryptophan to serotonin and then converts it to melatonin. So you go from tryptophan, which you can get from foods, different types of nutrients, converts it to serotonin, and serotonin creates melatonin. Now, some people will take melatonin supplements. I don't know if you guys have seen it. So some people are taking melatonin supplements. So, and you read many of the supplement stuff, they say you should be careful that you don't take it long term. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want the melatonin to suppress your own pineal gland's ability to create. This is like bodybuilders taking testosterone. If you take testosterone, which is some people do, guess what happens? Your testes start shrinking because your testes think, I don't need to produce anything anymore. So we need to understand that there is a chemical process on how your body actually creates it. This is sort of the natural way. So one could argue if you feed your body tryptophan and your other enzymes, it'll create it. But this is sort of the natural synthesis process. Now, melatonin has a regulatory function. It regulates sleep. It's an effective antioxidant. People should understand. It regulates mood. It regulates learning and memory. It regulates immune activity, which is what happens when you get proper sleep. So we're all stressed out with this COVID-19 stuff. We're under fear, wearing around masks, not knowing who to trust. I can guarantee you that you're not getting a lot of good sleep. Okay, it's affecting your immune activity. And this is why these people like Fauci and the Gateses and the Hillary Clintons, all who are behind this, by the way, Hillary Clinton included, who, by the way, I have to remind people, Mr. Kennedy voted for 3 times, endorsed her, etc. Affects your dreaming. It affects your fertility and reproduction, aging, and pain. So melatonin has many, many different effects. It's a very powerful molecule. Now, in the Indian system of medicine, melatonin was known as an anti-aging molecule. So when people meditated in all the ancient Siddha writings, they put it in poetic terms, why it's good to get to the mountaintop and get to the mango tree, because the mango tree oozes out when you pluck the mango a certain white chemical. Well, what they were saying in allegorical terms was that it's important that you reach the mountaintop of yourself, and when you do, your body will release melatonin. Melatonin has been known by yogis, by rishis, by traditional medicine people as a very, very powerful molecule for enlightenment, for anti-aging, for all those very powerful things, which we could do a whole lecture on. But that's what I wanted to walk you through, that this is the pineal gland is about calmness. It's about releasing melatonin. Now, remember I told you the paper I came across, and this is to the people who want to get a direction on where I'm coming from with 5G, is that turns out the pineal gland is a piezoelectric crystal. It's a piezoelectric crystal. One of my master's degrees is in the field of wave propagation. My master's, in fact, I did in the field of piezoelectric ultrasonic signals. If you ever go to an ultrasound machine, you go to the doctor and they do the ultrasound. Well, the ultrasound machine actually uses a crystal. They send an electrical wave, which creates a pressure wave, which is an ultrasonic wave that goes into your body, and then the pressure wave reflects, and then you can gather what's going on inside the body. But piezoelectric crystals, where if you put a pressure, a mechanical pressure, it creates electricity. Alternatively, you can put an electrical current and it'll create a sound wave. Because what is sound? Sound is a mechanical wave. Piezo means it's mechanical stress, and electric means electric. So magnetoelectric crystals, where you put magnetic energy, it creates electric. Nature has all these different ways of doing conversion of energy from one form to another. So in this case, only certain materials possess the piezoelectric effect. Mechanical stress generates electrical potential across the opposite sides of a crystal. Conversely, if electricity is passed through the crystal, converts electrical energy to mechanical vibration. Let me tell you that one of the powerful areas you'll find in piezoelectricity is your own body. Fascia in your own body is actually piezoelectric. Many years ago when I went to a rolfer, have you been to a rolfer? Rolfing is very different than massage. Rolfers don't move around your muscle, they actually move around your fascia, Fascia. Well, this guy was pushing mechanical pressure on my fascia because it's deeper, it's one of the deepest massages you can get. And I felt literally an electrical wave, Jeremy, go through my body, and to everyone listening. And it turns out a piezoelectric crystal, so when you put pressure, it generated electrical wave. So it turns out the pineal gland is piezoelectric. So if an electric wave comes, let's say an E&M radiation, 5G, 4G electrical, your body will create a mechanical wave internally. And when you start learning how to meditate, you'll learn how to you learn how to pump the cerebrospinal fluid, which is a mechanical wave, up through your spine. And that cerebrospinal wave can support in meditation process to open up the pineal gland. But to me, when I started connecting the dots, it became very clear that it makes sense why the pineal gland is piezoelectric. So the pineal gland has piezoelectric effect, and there's many interesting applications of piezoelectric effect. We use it in ultrasound, sonar, musical instruments, etc. Now, this is a real effect. So when you talk about 5G, my theory on this is that the pineal gland is where we should be looking at. And we should look at the different waves, and this should be an area of research we should be conducting. We don't know which types of waves affect which types of pressure waves in there, but this is some research that needs to be done. I'll be doing another series on this because we're putting that research together, but today I wanted to give you this to let you know that I've been doing this. Now, look at this paper that came out in Cancer Cause Control, Circadian Disruption, Shift Work and the Risk of Cancer, Summary of the Evidence and Studies. This paper is an interesting paper. It really shows people do shift work. They're awake during the night. They're not getting the pineal gland's operation, higher evidence of cancer. This was quite an interesting one. And for women, night shift work, light at night, and the risk of breast cancer. Look at this, 1.14% increase for each night per week, increase in breast cancer. And here you see 60% increase for graveyard shift workers. Because when you are getting all that light at night, your pineal gland is off. It's not producing the melatonin it needs.
And you're probably attempting to sleep during the day.
And you're attempting to sleep during the day, which is now light, unless you go into a totally dark area. So this is where we should be focused on if we want to focus on 5G. And that's sort of a very different systems approach I want to bring to you. So here is the piezoelectric diagram where you put pressure, you get electrical wave being generated. Here, this is a paper that came out on the circadian rhythm, how disruption of the circadian rhythm. By the way, circadian rhythm is a rhythm of your body. Your body has a vibration when it likes to get up, when it likes to go to sleep. And then here's the night shift work and late night work paper showing that the highest risk of getting breast cancer because you throw off the pineal gland. Let's go to the adrenal gland. Now, with that background, I know everyone's waiting for adrenochrome, so I want to make sure I gave you that background. So what I just shared with you is the pineal gland, in my view, from the Eastern tradition and even from the Western tradition now, is the gland that's involved in calming the body. It's the thing that controls a beautiful vibration of your entire body. By the way, if you put your hands in the back of your hips, that's where your kidneys are, and above the kidneys are the adrenal glands. And this is a picture of them. Here's your kidney, and there's these small glands, and there's at least, most vertebrates at least have one adrenal gland, and it's the center of fight or flight. It's a center of fight or flight. Just think about that. It's a center of fight or flight. And it's on top of each kidney, and there's two distinct tissues here. There's a medulla, and then there's a cortex. And this is a little bit bigger than the pineal gland. It's about 3 centimeters wide and it weighs 7 to 10 grams. So it's about 10 times, actually about 100 times bigger, right? 0.1 grams is the weight of the pineal gland. This is about 100 times bigger than that. It's 10 grams.
And more dense.
And much more dense. Right. Now, remember, we talked about the pineal gland controls the circadian rhythm, but the adrenal glands control your blood sugar levels, the balance of salt and water, the fight or flight response. It's a response to stress. It controls your blood pressure. It's very important for maintaining pregnancy. And it's also important in initiating and controlling sexual maturation during childhood and puberty. So it has, as you can see from the Indian tradition, it controls what's called the lower chakras, sexual maturation and the flight or fight response. It's a primal response. So if you want to think about it, if the crown chakra is what you call your enlightened being, this is your primal being, the animal part of you.
Will to survive.
The will to survive. It's very, very animalistic. Now, from a biological standpoint, it is involved in the production of hormones, mineral corticoids, corticosterone, aldosterone, 11-deoxycorticosterone, what we call cortisol, glucocorticoids. So when you get cortisol coming into you from stress, androgens, DHEA, very important for men to have their testosterone, their desire to want to fight and their will. That's where testosterone, the precursor from DHEA. Catecholamines like adrenaline, which we'll talk about. But in the Chinese system of medicine, just to take a step back here, beyond the Siddha system of medicine, I spent probably 6 years studying Chinese system of medicine. Now, in the Indian tradition, you put a lot of effort on liver, those organs, but in the Chinese system, they always put it on the Jing. They call it the Jing in things like Qigong. You're trying to support your Jing, which they say comes from your kidneys, or the water element, which is your adrenals, which is your base chakra. So it's a very interesting thing. So I just want to let you know that these different systems of medicine had attention to where they would put their efforts into. Chinese system was the Jing element. They felt like your energy came from here. Again, some Indian systems of yoga, they put it on the lower chakra. So here's adrenaline, also known as epinephrine. Adrenaline is a biogenic catecholamine. You don't need to know what that means, but it's a class of compounds which are called catecholamines. And it's synthesized from tyrosine and dopamine. So in order to make adrenaline, you need tyrosine and dopamine. And the glucocorticoids, which are stress hormones, increases the synthesis of adrenaline. So your hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, what's known as your HPA axis, that sends down glucocorticoids, and that increases the synthesis of adrenaline. You see a tiger coming at you or a lion chasing you. Well, that sends a series of signals and your body makes adrenaline. So when we talk about this stuff out there in the ether about what's happening to these kids, I want you to start appreciating it's stress. It's the flight or fight response. Your body goes, oh my God. Imagine a kid being harassed or chased around, or potentially the kid thinks it's going to be killed, right? Or something like that. Or an animal, it's going to start releasing adrenaline. As we say, adrenaline initiates a fight or flight response. And again, you can see this has a benzene ring in here, 2 OH groups. Here's another OH hydroxy group and a nitrogen group here. So this is adrenaline. That's what it looks like from an organic synthesis standpoint. Yeah, someone said, can you touch on oxidative stress? You read my mind. We're going to talk about it. Kathleen, your pineal gland is working well. So now let's go to the regulatory function of adrenaline. Adrenaline, what does it do? Well, it increases blood pressure. It increases blood glucose levels because your body needs energy to run. It goes, oh my God, a tiger's coming at me. It decreases insulin secretion, right? It decreases liposis in adipose tissue. So if you have too much of this going on, right? Too much cortisol, you're constantly putting it out, constantly under stress, you're going to start putting on adipose tissue. You stop burning up fat. This is why chronic stress can affect weight gain. If you're constantly under stress, you're going to decrease liposis, which is breaking down of fat. And it has the inhibition of allergy mediators from immune cells. So histamine. So in this case, it can actually help mediate allergies. So that's a good thing. Now let's talk about adrenochrome. Everyone ready for adrenochrome? Let's go to adrenochrome. This is an important discussion now because you're going to learn what's really likely going on. So you're going to get from an MIT PhD in biological engineering, from a systems guy, not from some talking head, but I'm going to arm you now with some chemistry. So listen very carefully. We've learned about the pineal gland. Now we're going to go to the dark side. Now, adrenochrome, what is it? First of all, the chemical structure, you notice, is very different. Remember, adrenaline looked like this. It had this benzene ring with the OH. Adrenochrome looks like this. It's got this, but you notice this benzene ring is folded on itself and you get this. So adrenochrome is a stable oxidation product of adrenaline. That's what an in vitro study showed. We don't have a lot of animal studies, but the in vitro study showed that it causes neuronal cell death after the treatment with adrenochrome. Adrenochrome altered the behavior in animal studies. Some animals got hostile, some animals got indifferent, some got less catatonic. But indifference is a cool thing, I thought, Jeremy. Indifference means you don't care, which means you may not care if other people get hurt.
It's like a lack of a response.
Lack of response. But this indifference and hostile is what I thought was very interesting. It altered the behavior in animal studies. And adrenochrome produced schizophrenic-like hallucinations. Now, this is what I thought was interesting, because in the Eastern system of medicine, they say if you don't get the Kundalini working right and you play with it, you can actually become schizophrenic. And remember, you're pumping, in that model, you're innervating the adrenal glands. So let's go back here. So that's something I want you to understand. There's a very interesting correlation there. Now, this is what I want everyone to focus on. You may want to take notes. You're welcome to take a screenshot of this. So the question I started asking is, could I understand this in the context of the observations people have been reporting? That they're taking a child, frightening it, which means adrenaline, and then putting it under such stress that it creates adrenochrome. Because as I understand, and the people who know more about this than I do, is that the adrenochrome is being created by taking these kids, scaring them, fight or flight, and then torturing them. And that puts the body into a state that they create adrenochrome. So I wanted to actually explain this. And I believe to everyone here, I have probably the first explanation of this, how this is going on at the molecular systems level. You won't get this, by the way, from Joe Kennedy or Robbie Kennedy or Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton may actually know about this, for all we know. What's going on here? Adrenaline. When we did our systems analysis of the research, adrenaline is released in response to a stressful, exciting, dangerous, or threatening situation. So here is the bobcat chasing that mouse. It hasn't caught him yet, but it's chasing it, right? This is when that mouse, let's say, I don't know what they're potentially doing to these kids, right? If they're scaring those kids and chasing them around, right? Scaring the hell out of them. It's like the bobcat chasing the mice. And this state starts producing adrenaline. It's increased synthesis of adrenaline. And there's enough papers saying adrenaline responds to stress. So we know under that kind of stress, adrenaline is created. Now, what I found fascinating as I did research over the last, since people wrote to me, is that oxidative stress, which is different than this kind of stress, is highly correlated with anxiety. Anxiety causes an accumulation of reactive oxygen species such as O2-. So this was one paper that came out, which says oxidative stress and anxiety. This was a role of oxidative stress and anxiety disorder. So let me tell you what this is like. So to put it simply, you need stress and anxiety to create adrenochrome. If you're going to do this to an animal, be it a child or lab rat, you have to put it under extreme stress and anxiety. And that's what we're talking about. With just stress, you don't get it. With just anxiety, you got to have both. So this is what I would call extreme torture. Because if you just have stress, you're not going to get adrenochrome. You have to have the stress and the anxiety. Everyone getting this? Everyone clear on this? So this is the example I like you to do. The lion is chasing the zebra. That's probably when adrenaline is being released. It hasn't got him yet. It's chasing him. But what about when this incident is occurring? This is when you're torturing the animal. You got it. This is the anxiety. So this will release adrenaline. In my theory, this releases a superoxide, which is the reactive oxygen species. So you need this and this. You need this and this. If you're just chasing it around, you get adrenaline. So if we want to put it in perspective, you need the stress and the anxiety to get this. So you need both of this taking place. To me, this is stuff that I've heard, but it started connecting. They're probably torturing whoever they're doing this to. This is sort of torture, right? And if you keep doing this and it's sustained, now at least in the animal world, they probably do this quickly and get it over with, right? But if you assume you torture it more, you're going to get more of this species, more of this, more adrenochrome. So prolonged torture, more stress, more anxiety is going to get you this. So what I want to share with you, everyone, is I think I have a basis for understanding adrenochrome synthesis. And it falls in line with people have been saying they're torturing these kids. If you really think about it, we're talking about the base chakra here, right? The adrenal glands, which correlates again back to what we talk about in the Indian system, which is the Kundalini energy, which people say it's very, very dangerous. Now, I want to now switch back to the crown chakra. just to give you the contrast, remember the title of this talk is There's a Difference. This is a very interesting paper that came in Frontiers of Neurology. It came out not that long ago, about less than 10 years ago. It says meditation and its regulatory role on sleep. And look at this. It says meditation increases melatonin concentration by slowing its hepatic metabolism or augmenting the synthesis in the pineal gland. Diurnal melatonin levels are found to be significantly higher. Remember I talked about Vipassana? I've done Vipassana twice. It's a 10-day retreat. You don't get to speak. If you guys want to do it, send me notes and I'll tell you. I've done various meditation forms. So look at this. Diurnal melatonin levels would be found to be significantly higher, approximately 300 pg per milliliter than non-meditating. Look, that's 5 times higher. 5 times higher amount of melatonin, that beautiful calming molecule in meditation versus non-meditators. This is the big takeaway that you can say that Dr. Shiva just offered you. An explanation for this. An explanation so people don't think you're crazy when you say, well, the torturing releases adrenochrome. So I think I have a basis for this. And I hope this was helpful. And this is the kind of stuff that I will continue to do for you, to take a systems approach to take an attempt at explaining things. This is beyond left or right now. This is molecular systems biology, it's biochemistry, but I believe I created a basis for a theory to understand this. Someone said adrenochrome is a ritual that has been used on kids. Well, if it is a ritual that involves torture, which involves a flight or fight response, the adrenaline, and the anxiety, what happens when you drink it? Does it actually benefit adrenochrome? Someone said, gives a drug high. I have not done it, but what I can tell you is that today's talk was to really let that I have found basically from the use of CytoSolve process, the formation of adrenochrome is formed and a physiological or behavioral basis for its creation. I will do a follow-up on what adrenochrome does in the body. We're still doing research on this. It's very little done on this. Anyway, thank you everyone. It was a pleasure. And again, I hope this was valuable. We will do to keep the talks on adrenochrome, but our goal here was to really let you know, I think we have discovered a chemical basis for what people have been talking about with the fear and the stress. The bottom chakra, adrenal glands, pineal gland, the top chakra, melatonin, adrenochrome, there's a difference. And that was really the title of the talk. Thank you, everyone. Be the light, be well. Let's win this fight. Thank you.